Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. This is Tara Lee Live, and we are here live on YouTube. If you are joining us live, remember to have live chat up, not top chat. And also remember to like and subscribe. And when you subscribe, hit that bell so you can get these notifications, because we are going to have so many more panels like this going on. We have the real Amazon John in the house today, and we're going to be talking with him about plant medicine. And I'm super excited. Drake is going to be kind of doing the questions for me today. I'm super excited to have Drake do this for me. He's an amazing co-host. I really appreciate you being here. We also have Dragonfly Earth Medicine, Josh, in the house. He's like the ghost in the garden over there, taking a few bong rips earlier with us. So welcome, guys. And I'm thinking we just start this off with a rip. And I'm going to let Drake get right into talking with John, because I just really appreciate this guy's oh my gosh, the work that they're doing behind scenes. You guys have no idea. So I would really like to talk about that and really show that off today. So yeah. Drake, I'm going to turn the time over to you. Go ahead.
Love it, Tara. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for jumping on. Oh, hello. We've got two ghosts in the garden now. Lovely to see you, Kelly. Yeah, John, as Tara said, I'll jump in and I'll do a little starting rip with you. And maybe we can just have you quickly bring everyone up to speed on to who is Amazon John. Just give a quick little rundown of what you've been up to.
Well, been just following my passion with with plant medicine here, Drake. It's been a long road. Who is Amazon John? Well, the name comes from just spending most of 27 years in the Amazon rainforest, treasure hunter in the beginning, and then dealing with pre-Columbian artifacts, and later dealing with a lot of gemstones and mineral specimens out of the mines in Uruguay and Brazil and Peru and Argentina, and then starting a lot more exploration upriver in the Amazon basin and trading in artifacts and blowguns and a variety of indigenous utilitarian items. And then that evolved into plant medicine when these guys really helped a serious health challenge that I had and turn my life around. It became the passion that, the real treasure in the Amazon rainforest is, in fact, it's close to 100,000 species of medicinal plants growing there that have all these profiles and compounds that can, interface and interact with our physiology to either eliminate, health challenges and, or even more importantly, give our bodies compounds and energetics and information and chemistry that they never had before, which allow us to actually activate at a higher level all the organs and glands and systems and say, hey, wait a minute, I've never had this in my body before. Look what I can do now. So we're seeing things move to people incorporating this into as part of their diet, to just to move to higher levels of health that they previously thought were unattainable. So continuing on that path, because that was impressive to me and lots of other people. I had an Amazon herb company for many years, and as I transitioned that company, then it left me time to really focus on medicinal cannabis. And so that's been my focus specifically for the last 8 years as a medicinal plant, so many hundreds of medicinal plants I work with from the Amazon for 3 decades, really taking all of that energy and devoting it to cannabis with its various forms and different chemovars and various profiles, and seeing how we can formulate and manifest some of this into specific product that will help change people's lives with the challenges they're dealing with.
Of course, beautiful. Thank you so much for giving us that little rundown, and that leaves it open for a couple transitions we have. And when we were speaking earlier, just talking with with the nomenclature, switching over from the kind of indica sativa over to now we're chemovars, right? We don't want to kind of give it just a bland description. We want to really get into the nitty gritty and see how these certain chemovars affect each individuals in every way, and as to what compounds are generally causing it to do so. With that, we find there's so many compounds in some of these, cannabis being one of the miraculous ones that's just chock full of little goodies. And we find it really hard to be able to do any sort of testing on large scale with all these different compounds. As soon as you get more than 2 or 3 single molecules, it gets really confusing and hard to produce standards for the testing. So prior, we talked about this EDS, this electrodermal screening. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yes, you did.
Do you want to go into that a little bit, and just as to how you're using that and how that kind of looks at things in a different light, but still produces some sort of understanding of the overall whatever units used?
Yes, I will. Yeah, good question, Drake. And the idea that, yeah, we can see a lot in blood if we're looking at blood chemistry and blood analysis, and that's becoming more sophisticated all the time. And as all this technology there's so much we can tell from that, depending on what you're looking for, what you find or what you don't find, and what we may believe is interfacing with a specific health challenge, or ways to reverse that health challenge and gravitate back to, a full expression of health. And then we also know that there's so many things that we don't understand, that we haven't identified. We can only test for and look for things that we have identified. And there's no magic thing where you put something in a funnel and it tells you everything that's there, because that list, could print out for days and days, with the number of chemicals and the phytochemistry, the energetics information, all of that we don't really have measurable analytics for in many ways. So when someone introduced to me this electrodermal screening in Florida 30 plus years ago, they suggested, hey, John, here's there's a technology that's available that this doctor has. And if you go, they can tell you, everything that's going on in your body. I thought, yeah, sure. That sounds really interesting, but a little bit, I can't really totally accept that till I try it.
Eyebrows. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went, and they asked me to fill in all these forms to say, what's your history and everything. I said, well, no, wait a minute. The idea is that you're going to tell me, I'm not going to tell you. So I said, sure, come on in. So they had this computerized device that had like a brass rod on one side and a measurable device like a pencil from the other side that would actually read the galvanic skin resistance at these acupressure meridians and points. So here's some computerized technology that had looked at the meridians in, like Chinese medicine, the meridians lines that we have and the acupressure points, which correspond to different organs. So you can look at your heart, spleen, thymus, lungs, liver, and measure with this device, because you have a completed electromagnetic circuit, the energy happening at those organs. And that's measured on a screen, and you can look at that. You can see, is this in a degenerative state, a challenge state? Is it a normal balance functioning organ, or is it in a state of inflation, or rather inflammation, that's responding to a lot of stimuli, whether it be virus, yeast, fungus, mold, bacteria in the environment? So as we went through that testing, everything was looking good, and then they hit a point and the needle just went, whoa. They said, hey, have you ever had any problems with your liver? And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because that's why I had a near-death experience with hepatitis. And here's someone that I'd never seen before in my life with this technology, and they have identified that without taking blood, with just me live in front of them. And so I said, yeah, I have. And they said, well, are you doing anything for that? I said, well, I've got a lot of herbs and things that I used, when I was in the jungle, and I can bring it. Said, bring them in, we'll test it. So I brought all these material in, and because you have a completed electromagnetic circuit during this testing, there's a plate which you can introduce things into that circuit that will change this reading. I mean, this is before you eat it. it will change that reading, because now it is part of that electromagnetic circuit as well. And you can see, is this going to be good for that organ? Is it not going to be good? And as we started getting into this, they were, these practitioners were really impressed with the amount of botanicals that I had, that I had collected over time in the rainforest, and what they were seeing happen on this machine with their testing. And they said, we'd really like to test a lot of our patients with this, because it's non-invasive testing. There's no blood. There's, there's no risk factor to doing those tests. And so they ran a lot of their patients through it and said, listen, we need to incorporate this into our practice. We need to be making some formulas. And that was the beginning of Amazon Herb Company so long ago. And that technology, just like all technology, you can imagine, the last 30 years, has gotten really more and more and more sophisticated year after year after year, to where the amount of things we can read in that, we're not just looking at, pure chemistry analytics, but looking at the other imprints that are inherent in anything or any remedy we're doing, being the informational imprint, the synergistic interactions between maybe two things that you're looking at the same time. And so using that as one of the filters, and one of our kind of go-to analytics for actually making formulas for people, that's been going on for 30 years. So that's a brief description of that sort of technology. So rather than, which offers something different, as we were speaking before, how do you measure some of these things where we really, people would say we don't have the analytical methodology to measure some of these things, these complex interactivities and complex ingredients that are found in nature, that are difficult to isolate, quantify, and analyze. Here's some technology that, without isolating, quantifying, and analyzing, we're able to see how the difference it's going to make interfacing into human physiology. So without knowing the why, right, we're able to see what is happening. So it's a little different track on that.
Yeah. And then as we were saying before, and then you can take it from that point and then kind of, do the reverse engineering and break it down, and then kind of figure out in a more isolated manner as to what compounds are doing which thing, and then maybe move backwards again from that point, and then find out, okay, but now when you add just a tiny bit of this and a tiny bit of this, we're getting a little bit more reaction, we're getting this reaction. It's just able to kind of bridge those gaps, right? And then, as one comment you made before, the testing will get there eventually. And I kind of like that, right? Because like with the way science goes and the way technology is, we're always advancing, we're always moving forwards, and eventually we're going to be able to have more standards for these wider variety of testing, right? 3, 4 molecules, 5 molecules maybe, and have things that are going to be able to quantify that properly and give us proper results. So that excites me.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, very well put. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. First, we can see, hey, look, this is going to be beneficial to someone with liver, kidney dysfunction. And then, okay, why? And then we put it to a series of patients where this test is continually showing up the same, and those patients incorporate that into their bodies. Good things happen with the change, and then you're sparked to say, well, why is that? We know there's research on these compounds that are in here. And so, but is that why that is happening? And so then, then the normal scientific mind would want to isolate that chemical or compound and see if that's the same thing is happening or not. But we do know, in nature, there's a synergy there. There is an entourage effect going on. And so the more I do it, the more it teaches me to lean back on that and just acknowledge that and respect that and appreciate the benefit that we're getting. So there's plenty of scientists, some of the best scientists in the world, that are carrying on that back end of trying to discover, okay, exactly what's happening here with these organisms. And while that's going on, it's obviously a wonderful thing to see people getting benefit from that compound while the rest of that is happening.
Do you find that it's important to check people's microbiome to see how it affects, each herb as it's going in, or even, the fecal implants, or, is there any check on fecal implants or that type of microbiology in your work?
Yeah, the microbiology is one of the things that's being looked at here in a broad sense, because as we have billions of cells, and yet we've got trillions of microbes in our body. So there's more microbes by an order of magnitude in our body than there is even cells. So the microbiology there and the interfacing of those microbiology, the more we learn, the more it really comes down to that. I think that's a critical function right now in a big area of focus. I think that's totally justified. And again, we know that, okay, here's a dozen, microbes or beneficial probiotics that is important to have in your gut, because that's what we've identified. And here is also a dozen pathogenic microbials that you really don't want there. And so we know when you introduce the beneficial microbials, they will outcompete the pathogenic microbials. And so it keeps that whole thing in a balance and in a check, because like I say, there's trillions of them in our body and in our gut, which is the highest concentration of that. They're living in a degree of balance. And we know what upsets that balance is things like an antibiotic rather than a probiotic. It's an antibiotic designed to kill bacteria. And so when it kills the bacteria, that you're obviously looking to kill the pathogenic bacteria, which it very well may do, but it's also killing the beneficial bacteria. And so that beneficial bacteria really needs to be replaced or fed or repopulated, because the surviving pathogenic bacteria may come back and get the upper hand. And so you get into that cycle of just doing more and more antibiotics. And, bio being life, we're killing the very core life form that opens up all the signaling pathways, because all these probiotics, all this microbiology in our gut, and actually it's all over our body, are opening these signaling pathways. Your gut brain, they call it now the gut-brain axis, where this information is going, your whole neurological system. And when you open up those pathways, good things happen. And that almost leads to cannabis and the endocannabinoid system, where you have an endocannabinoid system which is totally geared to accept cannabinoids, either, internal cannabinoids or outside cannabinoids that we're putting in. And because that, and of course, cannabis is the richest source of cannabinoids that we know, and which is why we see cannabis being used for such a variety of things, MS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, pain, inflammation, cancer, seizures. And normally, when I look at the botanical kingdom and, 30 years of working with botanicals, you'd have specific botanicals or formulations that would address each one of those areas. So to have one plant where you're getting these multiplicity of benefits just means that they're interfacing with that endocannabinoid system that influences every neurological, every physiological system, and opens up those specific metabolic pathways. If it's the Alzheimer's or seizures, if that's the weak link and you lock in some cannabinoids there, you can see pretty immediate changes happening, because the signaling pathways are open. And it also helps to create an environment where the beneficial bacteria live. So yeah, with the fecal implants that you mentioned, when somebody is so deplete of the proper, beneficial microbials, then whatever their life experience has been, normally that's involved a whole series of IV antibiotics and everything else. So now they wiped out, their entire population. So you really have to repopulate, and you should, and that's one way to do it, is to taking the microbial population of a healthy person and implanting it into your gut. And then you're going to want to give that, all the food and the proper environment to have that population outpopulate the pathogenic organisms. So yeah, the microbiology, as you can tell, you've opened up a really, really big can here. And I would probably finish, the microbiology little encapsulation with the notion that the microbiology is not just in us. The microbiology is in all of nature. And in a plant, you look like our gut is the highest concentration of the microbiology. And in a plant, it's around the roots, in the soil is the concentration of microbiology for that plant. All the beneficial compounds and microbes are outcompeting the pathogenic microbes in the soil, in the roots, and actually creating enzymatic processes and forming colonies. Once there's a quorum or a certain density of population of microbes in the soil, they form a colony, and they're able to begin to communicate, actually through chemical signaling, to communicate with other microbes. And they access resources in the soil from different places, and they're communicating with each other with that chemical signaling. And now we know that the microbes in the soil are communicating with the plant, and the plant is communicating with the microbes, the bacteria and the microbials in the soil, to access these nutrients or those nutrients and to outcompete the pathogenic organisms. So the analogy would be our gut is to our body, the highest concentration being in the gut of our microbials, is the analogy the plant's soil is to the plant. So that's where you have the concentration of microbiology and the interfacing with the plant. And I would just go one step further and say that in the garden, especially with a plant like cannabis, the microbes are not only communicating with each other in the soil and the plant, but I would suggest that those microbes, the trans-kingdom communication, where those microbes in the plant and the soil are also reaching out to communicate with the microbes in our gut. So if I'm colonizing and moving resources in the soil, and here's a guy that's bringing me water, I want to communicate with him too. So I see those microbes communicating with our microbes. And so people feel good in their garden because that is part of the trans-kingdom communication that's going on there. So really a big question. I'm sorry if I took it a little too far here, but very, very, the microbiology is really critical on all these fronts.
And this is why we always say healthy mind, body, and soil. Because, you can have all the herbs in the world, you can have all the roots in the world, but without a healthy microbiome to digest it, it just bypasses through your body. And almost every single presentation that we do, we make that correlation between gut biome and soil biome. And without a good soil, you could get the world's most healing plant in the world. But without a rich, deep soil filled with life, as you're saying, it's not going to have the ability to put it into its secondary metabolites in order to it, for it to come. And I believe that's what makes this plant a sentient being, like us. It is interacting with us. We always talk about starting the seed by putting the seed in your mouth and putting your DNA around the seed. So when the first radical root comes out of the seed, it's encoded with your DNA along with the soil DNA. So you have that immediate relationship with your plant. And then potentially You may find ways to use your urine, ferment your urine. Different people do. If you're doing your own, medical plants, using your own DNA, your own breath, those things help the plant make medicine for you. And I like that pygmies in the Congo, are one group, that talk about how growing is also healing and really nice. But if you can put your own energy into it and your own water and your own, intentions and your own thoughts and your own breath, then, that's going to be your deepest relationship. I really appreciate all the points you made, John.
Yeah, and speaking about a couple of the points you made, you addressed a list of quite a few of the conditions that cannabis shows a lot of promise with, because it goes on and on and on if you really write them all down and look at it, due to our endocannabinoid system and how everything works there. This question is a mouthful, and we've gone over it prior, so I'll just get it out so everyone that's viewing gets up to speed as well. We touched on the terms indica and sativa, and it's understanding that dividing that medical cannabis just into those two categories is it does no good, neither to the patients or to the doctors. There's been some alternative novel approaches to classify cannabis profiles. For example, we've got the approach from Dr. Ethan Russo and Dr. Mark Lewis called phytofacts, that involves ratios of a pair of the most pronounced phytocannabinoids and also 3 of the most pronounced terpenes of the plant. At the same time, we've got Dr. Didi Mary, who's saying that he's not been able to see terpenes affecting the progress of diseases like cancers. What seemed to affect cancer, according to him, is a mix of 2 or 3 monomolecular phytocannabinoid isolates. And some of those cannabinoids don't even have names nor analytical standards, like the promising phytocannabinoid 331-18B. So according to cutting edge cannabis science, aka those contrasting studies, there's no consensus on things like whether cannabis terpenes play a role in healing, or if cannabis labs around the world are able to detect some of the most functional compounds present in cannabis plants. It's easy for patients to be confused, along with some of with everyone. It's easy for everyone to get confused with that. But overall, it looks like at the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Wellness and Research Center, you're keeping your fingers on the pulse, and you're up to date with all this whole spectrum kind of idea with things. So you've been focused on cannabis profiles for roughly the last 8 years or more. Can we get you to explain what a cannabis profile is to you, and for you to address that as we did prior?
Yeah. Well, Drake, that's a pretty big fat question, and very, very important one. And you brought up Ethan Russo and Didi Mary, and these are clearly the rock stars in cannabis science and cannabis research. These are the champions. I know both of these gentlemen. I've been to Didi's lab in Haifa in Israel, and the Technon Institute. Spent some days with him, and Ethan Russo I've gotten to know, and with a tremendous amount of respect, because we share a bit of a commonality. I mean, my background in plant medicine in the Amazon rainforest, many people don't know that Ethan Russo spent months with the Machiginga Indians in Peru as an ethnobotanist and working with plants there. So he has a deep understanding. And Didi, being a plant scientist and as well first, and then now a cancer researcher with cannabis, also has an understanding of plants and the complexities there. And I know, talking to Didi, so either way these two gentlemen go, they're going to follow the science. These are serious scientists. They will follow that science. So it's lovely to see what Ethan is doing with the idea of, we can't, the algorithm gets very complex very quickly when you're taking more than one compound and wanting to do a scientific study with that compound to prove or disprove its effect on X, whatever that process is. And so for Ethan to go ahead and take the top maybe the top 2 cannabinoids and the top 3 terpenes and say, okay, this is the group that we want to study, I think is really quite extraordinary and a beautiful way to go, because we know there's hundreds of terpenes, there's hundreds of cannabinoids. So, but if we start, instead of being an isolate, if we start maybe with this group and see where that leads, I think that's a very fascinating trail to go on. And with Deddy, who has, you know, in conversations with him, private conversations with him, he's shown that in a study where they were getting effect, you know, in a petri dish with cancer, with a specific strain of cannabis. And so they isolate, okay, now we know, analyzing this strain, it's got this much CBD, this much THC. So if you made that much THC and that much CBD as an isolate, we would have a therapeutic agent. And when they do that and try that, then it doesn't work. So we say, oh, okay, so what if we did just that much THC or just that much CBD, and neither one of those worked? So it's something else that was in that plant that was giving that benefit. So, and he continues to identify new cannabinoids. I mean, so many that they don't even have names. You had mentioned, I think, 13381B, or, you know, so these new cannabinoids, when they're present, good activity happens, and when they're not present, that doesn't happen. So going down that trail and then trying to isolate a few of those that he sees, you know, that's legitimate science going on as well. But I know, I mean, he certainly recognizes, I mean, the value of the entourage effect, and these didn't do it that we thought did, but something way down here when it's present does. So the why of the activity going on is very important. So what's the differentiation between those two from Ethan or Deddy, very legitimate, you know, scientists doing extraordinary work, and they're a little different. And every person is going to be a little different in this, as we all express whatever our experience and background skill sets are. Mine would be like, okay, if we know that this strain is getting this benefit, that's important. Okay, do we need to know why? Well, if you're a scientist, you want to know why. You want to take that down that trail. To me, I want to say, okay, let's see if we can enhance that benefit by making another strain, which is another profile. The question of the profile, I look at profile in a broad, you know, definition. The profile compounds you find in a specific chemovar being pretty much everything that's there. That's the profile. So we can measure cannabinoids, we can measure terpenes. I can measure a dozen cannabinoids in my lab here at home. And, you know, Deddy's measuring, you know, 140 plus cannabinoids. And now there's a new machine in La Trobe University that runs a little over 100 cannabinoids. And the terpenes, likewise, you can run 100 different terpenes. So for me, using the other kind of technology I described earlier, we're able to see this chemovar with this chemovar, with this chemovar, with a smaller percentage of this one. You know, that's where we're registering this kind of therapeutic effect, or it looks like we would get that kind of therapeutic effect with this person that we're testing, right? With this technology. And so what I have found in this methodology is that there's a variety, as we know, I mean, there's all these compounds in these plants, and the idea of an indica and a sativa, for me, kind of faded away a long time ago, because pretty much everything's a hybrid. You have some land races, you can say, okay, this was the classic indica and this was a classic sativa. But to me, pretty much everything's a hybrid one way or another now. And I've got, you know, about 53 new genetics that you know, I've bred over time, looking at, okay, I'm seeing this one, I'm seeing this one. If we breed those together, is that going to give us one instead of having two? Is that going to give us one? Or the multiple expressions of that come out differently too? So it gets to be, like I say, a very complex algorithm. However, I do know that when we are combining specific chemovars, for example, this year, I grew out about 30 new chemovars to see if I could plus a specific formula I had that had 18 chemovars in it. Is there something else that's missing here? Is there an additional terpene, an additional cannabinoid, a different concentration that could plus that? And out of the 30, there were 4 that I found when these 4 were also present. One at actually a pretty good percentage, and then the other 3 were much, much smaller percentages that the methodology I'm using, we look to enhance or the potential efficaciousness of this combination by almost 80%. So when I look at profiles, I'm looking at everything that's there. You know, I don't want to leave things out as long as the testing shows that it's beneficial, because there's some plants you put in there, okay, now it's not, because it's interfacing with these different metabolic pathways in a way that maybe it blocks what the benefits of this one here. So there's some compounds, there's some chemovars, you know, it doesn't all work, is what I'm saying, like anything. So, but there are specific chemovars that actually plus the ability for other chemovars to express. So I would take the position that yes, terpenes do modulate the expression of cannabinoids, and we know that terpenes have a beneficial effect on their own. I mean, the whole field of aromatherapy is where, I mean, the limonene, for example, with depression, we know that, you know, some of the more citrus dominant kind of terpenes can actually enhance your mood. So we know that the terpenes by themselves as isolates, you know, do have beneficial therapeutic effect. And the terpenes play such a role in cannabis. I mean, where do you get one species of plant that will smell, you know, like citrus, and another, the same species, different chemovar, will smell like diesel fuel, and another one is kind of skunky, and another one is like limes. I mean, that's, you know, what we have to deal with here is just a treasure house. And so that's kind of my definition of profile. Everything that's there, what we can identify and what we can't identify. I take all of that.
Beautiful. That was, yeah,
Well,
that's exactly
cheers
what
to that. You know what? Cheers to that, because I'm hitting on some amazing lemon profile, because that really helps with my depression. That's one of the things I treat cannabis with. Maybe you could throw out some things like for those of us that are using depression, or those of us that have certain things that we're trying to treat, what could we maybe look for, or what cultivars? Excuse me, I need to drink water, but go ahead. This has been awesome. Thank you, John, for being here. I just want to say again, and thanks to everybody in chat for being here. Please direct your questions my way. We'll get them answered for you.
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, you know, I would, yeah, the like limonene, things with limonene, I think are going to generally be good at treating or facilitating, you know, depression and things like that, to enhance that mood, to feel good that way. And, you know, there's certain chemovars that I bred, so they're not going to mean anything to anyone else. Tangerine Bliss and these things, I just give it a name to, right? You end up, hey, if you breed it, you get to name it. So, but that doesn't mean anything. We could also call it 172-16P. And ultimately, when we get into further analysis, that's what it will be. It won't say Tangerine Bliss. It will say these other numbers. But they're coming with this huge profile. So I think for people with all the general maladies that people are dealing with, you know, pain is really a big one. Pain, depression, anxiety, seizures, Alzheimer's, all of these things are so prevalent in our society. for a whole variety of reasons. Some of it goes back to the microbiology. The microbiology has been wiped out, so your body's not getting the signaling pathways between your brain and those organs to initiate a healing response. That message is not getting through. So cannabis is really good with facilitating an endocannabinoid system to reestablish that metabolic pathway of communication, so your body's own natural process will initiate that healing. So you have found, obviously strains or chemovars or combinations that really work for you. And I think people should be aware that when they are looking for relief for a specific entity, that they experiment with different strains or different chemovars, and know that it's not just cannabis across the board, or they use it and say, well, I didn't get any relief. But take a look at a different thing, and you can talk to people that have an experience with your kind of issue and the types of chemovars that they would use. And clearly from a medical standpoint, as we continue to go down that path, we'll identify specific chemovars, or what I believe will be combinations of chemovars that address more specifically pain, swelling, inflammation, seizures, cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, all the way through that scope. And that's the exciting part. That's kind of where we are now. First, it was cannabis is good for this or not good for this. And now we're realizing, whoa, the word cannabis opens up this whole plethora of chemovars and specific profiles of things, some known, some unknown. And we are definitively on that track to finding the best profiles for these specific issues. In the meantime, there's some broad spectrum combinations that I find where we've seen good results, and I say good results, these anecdotal results in multiple people, like with Parkinson's. And some of these things you can see pretty quick, right? With Parkinson's, you've got this shake, and then 15 minutes later, the shakes have been reduced by 60 or 70%. You can see that very quickly. And it may be that same combination or formula also for someone in chronic pain, where also in 15 minutes, the majority of that pain goes away. So it's going to be an experimental format. But the beautiful thing is we do know that there are effective compounds here, either alone or in combination, where we are getting these benefits. And it's really all about, I mean, to me as a plant medicine guy, are we achieving the benefits that we want to see? Is this therapeutically helping people change their lives, giving them a better life, pain-free, shake-free, disease-free, health challenge-free, so they can express themselves at their highest order of contribution. And we are seeing that.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I would just add that, for someone that has an ailment or depression, that, and as John stated, and I think he would probably agree with this, is that, it's probably a multitude of things that will bring someone out of it. Of course, not just cannabis will bring someone out of depression. And I think that as much as we talk about plant medicine, we do have to bring back the microbiome into it, and stagnation and exercise and soil medicine. So when you ingest soil microbes into your body, and that there's a lot of studies on soil microbes benefiting your lower and lower intestines. And also we would really suggest detoxes and cleanses. A lot of people overlook doing cleanses in their life because they get in their flow of what's happening, and they get used to their way of life. And when you cleanse and you detox, you rid your body of stagnation and pathogens. So that allows the plant medicine to come in and do its work, and to truly embody the healing that you're looking for. So I love everything that was said, and I would just encourage people to look into doing, you know, cleanses and look into soil microbes, because probiotics are something that doesn't last all the way through your gut. They usually end and their life terminates in the top part of your stomach, and the soil microbes go all the way through. So you really want to holistically treat your whole body and your whole presence, you know, your whole being, as you know, in when you're healing yourself, to go for. And also compounding, you know, the cannabis with other herbs and other medicinal mushrooms and Chinese herbs, you know, does add, you know, more metabolic pathways for the body to work with. And I think that when we look at people with ailments and, you know, depressions or Crohn's disease or whatever it is, degenerative diseases, a lot of times they lack diversity in their system. They lack diversity in their microbes. So without that diversity in the microbes, you can put all kinds of supplements in your body. You can put all kinds of different foods in your body, but your body won't uptake it. So it's really important for us to think of ourselves like, you know, we're feeding prebiotics to ourselves, and the prebiotics are the foods, those foods that go into us every single day. What's the first thing you drink in the morning? You know, is it an antagonistic thing against your neurology, or is it a superfood that uplifts you and brings you into the day as you break your fast? You know, these are the types of things that bring us into health. And the Industrial Revolution and allopathic medicine and isolating things all lessens the diversity. So I think as we move forward in medicine and in this awakening of plant medicine and living soil medicine, that we bring diversity back into our system with all of the different chemovars that we have with cannabis, you know, allow that to open up the ways of the Amazon plants, like John's saying, or the Chinese plants, or the Ayurvedic plants, or even the North American ones. Like we use polypores from the trees in North America here, which have very little studies. The red belted polypore, and you know, is one that's we use a lot, that's very unstudied in this area. And these are incredibly powerful immune boosters and have super powerful alkaloids and amino acids in them, and polysaccharides and beta glucans that also they also have receptors in our body, like CB15 receptors, and these other that goes beyond CB1 and 2. There's all kinds of different receptors in our bodies. So it's a great time for us to awaken. Many of us are locked down listening, and we can focus on our food as well as our medicine. So, hope I wasn't too choppy for that.
Well, I would agree 100%. And it is important not to focus on one specific item, right? Because it's very important when you're introducing a lot of these the very powerful healing compounds, not only cannabis, but all the other variety of herbs like you were speaking of. And in my case, a lot of Amazonian herbs. We know that, you know, when you're introducing that to your cells and they're uptaking those nutrients and those compounds, they're also like, whoa, now I can be more efficient, which means I'm also excreting the toxins out of my cell. And those toxins have to come out of your body through the kidneys and the liver or the lymphatic system. And our lymphatic system and your body will slow down its healing process if that whole circle is not complete. For instance, if you're initiating this healing response and your body begins to download the toxicity, but you're not ridding your body of the toxicity fast enough, the healing process will slow down because that circle has to slow down. The train has to slow down because you're not getting rid of the toxins fast enough. And if you could speed up that, then the train could move a lot faster. And so to do that, you want to have the kidney and liver support going on. And you also want to have movement, you know, because your lymphatic system is like your circulatory system, except it doesn't have a heart. So it doesn't have the circulation. So the only way it circulates, the lymphatic system, is by movement. like a rebounder or walking or chopping wood or running or something. You've got to have movement. You've got to have breath. All these things are critical to facilitating that healing process. And without that, you're going to be really compromising your ability to take full advantage of what the plant kingdom has to offer from a healing standpoint. So yeah, as you ingest these things, you got to have plenty of water and fluids, plenty, get the sleep, get the movement, get the breath. All of that is so important. It's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So people who are not doing those things, thinking they can just ingest some healing plants and get the maximum benefit, they can get a benefit, but the maximum benefits when you're incorporating, a much more holistic view of who you are and how you move in the world.
Yeah, and for all the growers out there, it's just like your soil, right? If you're in living soil, you want to have a nice, healthy, diverse system, and it's just the same with our body. If you throw one thing at it, it's going to help in its ways, but if you do the whole picture, it's going to be synergistic. We're going to promote homeostasis throughout the whole system. One of the things you touched on briefly, and I'd love you to go into a little bit more, is just some of the work you've done at the Cancer Wellness and Research Institution, or I might have butchered the name there, but yeah, go on, please.
Yeah. Well, my wife, Olivia, really her, I'm just supporting.
Well, also maybe mention their number one last night, and also maybe mention the foundation. That would be good to talk on that whole thing around that. Would that be good timing?
Okay, sure. Well, the number one thing is my wife and her daughter, Chloe, did a song together. It's a beautiful song called The Window in the Wall. And it was just released like 72 hours ago, and it's number one on iTunes. It's a very healing, a very optimistic song delivered in a very sincere and compassionate way, with two sterling voices delivering that message. The Window in the Wall. So yeah, thank you very much for bringing that up. So I have to say that the healing songs and the healing work that Olivia is doing now is off the chart. I mean, the Grace and Gratitude and Live On, and this latest song is just so extraordinary. Yeah, there it is. So all part of the healing, the music we listen to, the tapes that we play in our head, we've always had some kind of loop going on in our head. So to turn that into a positive loop just liberates the rest of your body to rise to the occasion. And the other part of the comment was what? There were going to be
this was touching
John Foundation. Yeah, thank you very much. We started an Olivia Newton-John Foundation fund specifically to study plant medicine and cancer, specifically to research plant medicine and cancer. And one of the first things we want to do is to be doing that with cannabis, with different profiles of cannabis, different formulas. So you can see, look up Olivia Newton-John Foundation, and you'll see, or the ONJ Foundation, you'll see kind of what we're up to there. It's a nonprofit organization where, yes, we would solicit donations and funds, and ultimately that is all designed to study plant medicine. And there is a study now going on that we've got partially funded by the Australian government. It's going on at Olivia Newton-John Cancer Wellness Center in Melbourne, Australia, which is a cannabis and cancer study looking at quality of life indicators. How someone's mood, how do they sleep, their pain levels, all of those kind of quality of life indicators. And then underneath that, they're also looking at blood markers and profiles of actually cancer progression, regression, apoptosis, and all of that. So that is something that's happening right now. That was a dream of ours for many, many years. That's live and happening. And that is a specific formula. And what we're looking to do now is to study some other formulations and compounds that we see here. So nothing could be, I think, more important or more exciting as we, develop these profiles, as I was talking about. Now let's see therapeutically what it can do. And we already have the research organization in Australia, a different research organization that's set up to look at, with cancer patients, how does a specific cannabis formula or other formula, and I've got one that's a combination of Amazon herbs as well, affect, circulating tumor cells in cancer patients, and also their quality of life indicators. So we're at the front end of that, and thank you so much for bringing that up, because, obviously we appreciate all the support we can get there to actually prove in the real world with real cancer patients, look, this is what's happening in this, a legitimate peer-reviewed study with cancer patients.
Well, thank you guys for doing that. That's massive. That's what we need. We need to just have the community as a whole just stand together and do amazing things like this, and work together to bridge all the different sides and get all the data logged and down so it can be researched more, and we can keep moving forward and ultimately get the patients what they need.
Drake, you've been really awesome doing questions today. I really appreciate you. And chat, thank you for hanging in there. Did you want to talk a little bit about maybe what you're doing in Australia there? Like, is there like maybe some like inside up to date things, maybe specifically what you do know, what we don't know, maybe something you could throw out for us today?
We do know that we're seeing benefit with initial readings with with all the cannabis formulas that are in play, and so that's great news. And I think building on that, because I'm so optimistic, I'm so happy that I think there's some newer combinations and formulas that can accelerate what we're seeing there. But the total results of that is still being tallied and will be published over the next couple of months, and we'll have that data in the bank. So yeah, there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around this, and people are appreciating. I think, what we've done with this new foundation. This is a new foundation. Olivia lent her name to a Cancer Wellness Center, which is a cancer hospital in Australia. And we focused on a wellness center there. The wellness center was really an oncological acupuncture, music therapy, oncological massage, all the things to go along with many of the traditional therapies that they were giving there. And so now it's evolved to the point where the new foundation, this is specifically about studying plant medicine for cancer, going to that level. And so anyone who's interested in seeing that happen, that's what we're about. That's why this thing exists. And we will be funding some very interesting studies in plant medicine, cannabis medicine and cancer, and other plant medicines in cancer as well. And we invite everyone to be part of that. ONJFoundation.org.
And I love that that Olivia's doing with the resonance and the sound healing, and we've been in our family here just learning more about the Schumann's resonance and how that 7.83 megahertz sound is so healing to the human body, and how touching the earth and being on the earth allows your body to connect with that sound healing wave, and bringing also that into your gardens, and also grounding your plants we've talked about before, which putting a copper wire or some kind of, or your plant's in the ground, but if you're indoors, then you have your plants connected to the earth so that their root system can be connected to that resonant sound in order for it to produce its ultimate medicine. So in combination with the microbiome and the healing of the soil, to be able to bring in sound healing and crystal healing and moon planting and different things like that to, bring in the full cosmic picture. It's not only really fun, but it is extremely powerful. And you really do see a dynamic reaction when you do start working with these modalities. And it's not about it being magic or anything like that. It's just about using what's around you to enhance what you're working with. And we all know that intention and mass consciousness and those things bring up, potentiality, so bringing in resonance and, those fields of healing are really powerful. And so I really appreciate that you all are bringing that to us, to the community, and all the plant medicine, everything that you're talking about today. We're extremely excited about. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Josh. That's awesome. Love how you said that. Drake, are you still here? Did we have any more questions? I'm going to maybe Drake cut out for a sec. We're having a little bit of internet issues. So thanks everybody for bearing with us. We're good. Okay, Drake.
No, I'm good. I'm ready.
You're good? Okay, cool. Did you have another question or are we done?
I'm good to go. I'm just getting ready to fire up a dab. I think I'll throw it to John's hand here. Do you have anything else do you want to bring up or touch on or talk about, or any places that anyone can reach you, so on and so forth?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the you guys providing this very important forum, and the consciousness but everyone on this podcast is bringing into the equation here. Every one of these topics is so important, from the microbiology, from the intentionality, from the healing, from the plant compounds, from the synergy. Again, you had mentioned Ethan and Deddy. They are rock stars in this area, and they may be on, doing their own specific studies in a couple of different areas. But the fact is, I don't think they're contrary to each other. I think they're both right. And so I think there's a lot of extraordinary minds and consciousness getting involved in this space now. And I appreciate you guys, providing a forum for a lot of this information.
We were blessed to have Ethan Russo to our home here last summer, and he also came to our gathering at Heartwood in Northern California, Heartwood Institute, and he's an important part of our lives. And it was really fun to walk him around our magical garden, because even in his realm where he's been studying, terpenes and cannabinoids and the entourage effect and cannabis roots and the sesquiterpenes and everything involved with all the healing modalities, even then, often those scientists haven't had the opportunity to really test regenerative cannabis. They've been locked into producing a lot of chemically produced cannabis because they're in a more clinical setting. So I've seen him really light up being introduced to our regenerative cannabis community to say, wow, the potential of learning more about the dynamic of the plant, because he's had experiences of bringing a high CBD plant from America and then bringing it over to Israel, and then they put it into their more hydroponic or their more synthetic system, and it changes the outcome of the plant. And it makes me feel like, if we're using nature as our guide, and if we're looking at herbalism as a guide, and we see that plants with their ultimate potential, they change a little bit in their life. Their chemical makeup is a little bit different every time. And allopathic medicine is always trying to produce like the exact same compound every single time for medicine. And I would just venture to say that, maybe a little variation within the plant, within the soil, may be positive to our immune response. It may be positive to exercising how our microbiology is able to be intelligent and attack a pathogen, or rid of a pathogenic fungi or bacteria. So I think that we can embrace herbalism and embrace plant medicine, knowing that there's a little bit of a change in every medicine. It's not exactly the same. It's not totally isolated. I think that we've learned that no matter what science proves, it's still happening in nature. So the nature magic is always there. And when science catches up to it and explains it to us in a way that we can understand, in a way that we can reproduce it, it does become very powerful. But I think that we can rest in the intuition and the knowledge that plant medicine is our ultimate healing. And that maybe, you know, when people say, oh, I don't know if it's the same every time, maybe that's okay. I do feel we need to have chemovars that express similar qualities each time. And I do understand that there's more liver compounds and more kidney compounds and lung compounds, and those things are magical and important. But I would love to see people just, you know, embrace plant medicine and know that change is very powerful to our body, and it's also part of the diversity that comes. So just a thing for that, and to also add, you know, soil microbiology to our system, because soil microbes are very, very powerful.
Beautiful. Very well said, Josh. John, I was going to ask maybe a little bit of questions about the bioharmonic tonic stuff we got going on. Maybe touch on that a little bit, or should we maybe do another episode and chat about that next time? We're running about the 1 hour thing, and I really respect your time. So don't want to go over that, what we planned on. So go ahead if you, I'm gonna leave it to you.
Well, yeah, I could easily spend an hour on that. And so maybe that's what we'll do. But essentially it is just topping off, you know, the current direction of the discussion with the diversity and the microbiology. You know, that's what bioharmonic tonic is about. It's adding that diversity of microbiology and an informational imprint and a medium where the microbials can communicate more efficiently. So you have a natural expression of the plant expressing itself at its fullest potential, which is part of, you know, the cultivation and growing methodology. So yeah, I'd love to talk more about that. And just one note on the diversity that was brought up there, which is so critical. And when you're cultivating, when I talk about these different chemovars that I use, you know, when you breed a new chemovar, you're going to have, you know, different expressions, right? You've got this male and this female, and you have those seeds. All of those seeds are not going to produce exactly the same plant, right? You're going to have a similarity there. But you're also going to have a phenotype expression. Some will take more from the mother, some will take more from the father, some will pick up something from the great-great-grandparents, you know, just like anything else. But I like to grow that out and to have those multiple expressions of that chemovar. So I'm not looking for that one and saying, okay, that's the mother, and I'm going to clone that one, and that's going to be, you know, part of this formula where I'm trying to get more of a standardized kind of approach. I like the diversity that comes from that specific chemovar, you know, in the F1 stage and further on, and the diversity that comes from this other breed as well. So yeah, there's going to be a difference in that specific compound, but we also recognize we live in a dynamic world, and there's going to be a difference in us as well. There'll be a difference in our physiology. And so those two differences, the plants are going to mature and shift and change in a dynamic way, depending on their environment, as are we. Depending on our environment, we're going to shift and change. And I think those two running on a parallel course is exactly what you want, because that plant is going to be expressing things in this next generation that is going to be potentially a compromise in our system. So that plant intelligence is following right along with us. And so we just need to respect that, honor that, and really reach out and embrace that.
Wow, so beautifully said. Dragonfly, any final thoughts today? And then John, I really appreciate you being here. I'll sum that up. Go ahead, Dragonfly. Josh?
Just really appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate your approach. I appreciate what you're bringing to the community. It's really important to us. I think it's really important to humanity. And I think with everything that you're doing, it really expands the knowledge. So I just am in appreciation at this moment. Thank you very much. I would love to continue the conversation, in life, if there's anything that we can exchange, together in life, we're very open to that. And just want to thank you, Tara, for this, for having this space. Thank you, Drake, for the beautiful questions. And yeah, I appreciate people taking charge of their health and not looking for people to do it for them. We're in a pandemic in the world, and it's not the medical system that's going to bring us out of it. Ultimately, it's our immune system and our herbal path, our herbal plant medicine, and our better wellness of our mindset and our spirituality and our community and our connection outside of governments. It's our connection as human beings on this earth, as people that touch the earth, as people that are part of our mycelial web, as people that breathe from the atmosphere and grow from the rhizosphere. If we recognize that we're all one and we can empower each other, then it doesn't matter what border that we live within. It doesn't matter which jurisdiction we're a part of. We're going to realize and recognize our immune system is empowered by these compounds. And I really want to just be a positive voice for that healing. And I really want to see humanity truly get better and truly heal. And so these types of conversations, in my opinion, and our opinion here at Dragonfly and the family, these are the kinds of conversations that bring us up as humanity and as human beings. So again, thank you so much for this time and space. And thank you for this projection of inspiration, because no matter what, from this conversation, someone's mind got turned on to do something better, and hopefully lots of people, and they can share that with their family. We have really us to support each other truly. So let's make that change and embody the change. And I can see, John, you're really healthy, and I really appreciate that. It's really important, and it's easier to hear a lesson coming from someone who's walking their talk, from someone who embodies what they're saying. So leading by example and teaching by example, I feel is really important, especially in this day and age. Thank you.
That was so very well said. Thank you. Drake, any final thoughts? I'll let you talk, and then I'm going to give John one more final thought. Go ahead.
I'm already ready for next time. I can't wait. I'm super excited. Amazing, John. Thank you so much for giving us the time. Ditto what Josh said, because I'll never be able to regurgitate something so beautifully. Thank you so much to everyone that comes and views this video. Everyone that's here now, much love. You're all fantastic. Please like and share this for Tara. Get the information out. We need to spread information, spread love in these dire times. It's not so bad if we can all just come together. So much love, and Tara, close us out.
Thanks, Drake. You're awesome. Thanks for always being here for my co-host, because it's so awesome to have someone to support you. It's so hard to go live sometimes. So always having you there, and you got my back. I appreciate you. And Dragonfly, you've been such an inspiration to me. I've been looking up to you forever since Hash Church. So every time you guys come and hang out with me, I'm super blessed. And I'm just love the opportunity that I got to hang with you, and definitely Ethan Russo. That was an amazing opportunity at the Hive. Hopefully we can have a conversation, get the Hive, some of the Hive group on, maybe on a Saturday, and maybe get John on, and then have one of those Ethan Russo conversations. That would be amazing. Maybe let's talk about that.
Yeah, that can definitely happen. We're into it.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get that going. Okay. John, any final words today to close us off?
Right. I'm just very grateful for sharing with everyone in this forum and the consciousness here, and I look forward to next time.
Beautiful. Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful day. As always, peace and love, and we'll see you again. Cheers.